Funny how people unsubscribe from your life without notice. One day they swear forever, the next they're gone. But hey, if you're here, hit subscribe. It's free, unlike loyalty. I never thought I'd share this story, but I need to get it off my chest. My name is Robert and I'm 45 years old. I run a highly successful elite wine bar in town, one that I built entirely from scratch. It's my pride and joy, a symbol of everything I worked for. But what I never expected was that my greatest challenge wouldn't come from business. It would come from my own home. It all started 5 years ago when I met Melissa. At the time, she was a bookkeeper I hired to help manage the financial side of my business. Intelligent, efficient, and exuding a quiet elegance, she quickly became more than just another employee. She made the long nights poring over financial reports bearable, even enjoyable. At first, I kept things strictly professional. She was new and I didn't want to overstep. But as time passed, I found myself lingering in her office, making excuses to check on her work just to be near her. Then one evening I finally made my move. "Let me take you to dinner?" I asked after we had finished going over the books. She hesitated, a small smile playing on her lips. "Are you asking as my boss or as a man?" "As a man." That dinner led to another and another. Before I knew it, we were discussing our future together. Everything seemed perfect. Melissa was warm and attentive, her son Ethan was polite and well-mannered, and I felt like I had finally found the family I always longed for. After a year of dating, we got married. Melissa and Ethan moved into my house, and I threw myself into my new role as stepfather. I attended Ethan's sporting events, helped him with school assignments, made sure he had everything he needed. Family vacations, the latest sneakers, whatever he wanted, I provided. I wanted to be the best stepfather I could be. But there was one thing that always nagged at me. Ethan's biological father, Kevin, was still in the picture. He had lost custody years ago after nearly burning down their old apartment in a drunken haze. But Melissa insisted that Ethan maintain a relationship with him. "He's still his father," she would say whenever I voiced my concerns. "Ethan needs to know his dad still cares about him." I tried to respect that. But the one time I saw Kevin at one of Ethan's school events, my gut told me something wasn't right. He stood there, swaying slightly, his eyes unfocused. Even from a distance I could tell, he wasn't sober. I wanted to say something, to put my foot down. But who was I to interfere? I was just the stepfather, right? God, if only I had known then what I know now. If only I had realized that my desire to be the perfect stepfather was blinding me to the truth. Hindsight is 20/20. And the real nightmare hadn't even begun. Not even close. Because everything changed when Ethan turned 18. Graduation was approaching and Ethan was a nervous wreck. He paced through the house, constantly mumbling, "What if something goes wrong? What if people don't come? What if it's not perfect?" One evening, as I watched him spiral into overthinking, I placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Hey, everything's fine," I said with a smile. "In fact, I have a brilliant idea. Why don't we host your party at the bar? I'll reserve the best section just for you." His face lit up instantly. "Really?" He grabbed his phone, already grinning. "Oh my God, my Instagram is going to be insane. Everyone at school is going to be so jealous." Seeing his excitement made it all worth it. I threw myself into planning, determined to make it the perfect night for him. I even took him shopping for a designer suit, a sleek black one that made him look like a young businessman. When he stepped out of the fitting room, I couldn't help but nod in approval. "How many guests are you inviting?" I asked as we discussed the details one evening. He hesitated, scrolling through his phone. "About 30 people." "Great. Can you send me a guest list? I want to make sure we have enough space and food for everyone." "Oh, I don't really have one yet," he said quickly. "Just plan for 30, okay?" Looking back, I wish I had insisted on that list. The night of the party, everything was perfect. The Upper West Wine Bar had been transformed into the ideal venue, sophisticated yet youthful, with golden lighting and elegant setup, and a curated menu of virgin cocktails and hors d'oeuvres. Ethan looked sharp in his tailored black suit, laughing with his friends, taking photos, basking in the attention. Melissa's family was there, mingling with his classmates, and for a moment, I allowed myself to believe that everything was as it should be. And then he walked in. I recognized Kevin before he even spoke. His steps were uneven, his eyes unfocused. He was drunk. "I'm here to wish my son a happy birthday," he bellowed, his voice loud enough to turn heads. Conversations hushed. People exchanged glances. I was sitting next to Ethan when Kevin staggered toward our table. Ethan tensed beside me, his expression unreadable, but I could see the flicker of embarrassment in his eyes. Kevin sneered, his gaze locking onto me. "Get up," he mumbled, waving his hand dismissively. And just like that, the perfect night began to unravel. "That's my seat," Kevin slurred, his voice thick with alcohol. "I'm his real father, not you." I kept my voice calm and steady. "There's plenty of seating with the other guests. Why don't you join them?" "No," his tone sharpened, a low growl creeping into his words. "This is my place. You need to leave." His bloodshot eyes burned with resentment. "Who do you think you are?" I waited for Melissa to step in to say something to defuse the situation. But she sat frozen, staring down at her hands as if they held all the answers she needed. I exhaled slowly. This was Ethan's night. I wouldn't let it spiral into chaos. "Let me be crystal clear," I said, my gaze locked on Kevin. "You have two options. Take a seat at the next table with the other guests, or security will escort you out." His face twisted in rage. "I'll listen to you. Mr. Moneybags throwing his weight around?" He spat, swaying unsteadily as he leaned against the table for support. "You think you can buy everything, don't you? Buy my son, buy my family's love?" A hush fell over the room. Guests turned to watch. My regulars pretended not to listen, but their stolen glances told me otherwise. My staff lingered at the edges of the room, awaiting my cue. Kevin's voice grew louder, his words slurring together. "You just waltzed in here with your fancy bar, your big house," he seethed. "Think you can replace me just because you've got money? Well, guess what? You can't buy family." Then, before anyone could react, he reached out and grabbed a dish from the table. With one violent motion, he hurled it to the floor. The sound of shattering glass tore through the silence. Then another. And another. Fine cheeses and cured meats scattered across the pristine marble floor. A bottle of imported sparkling water toppled over, spilling its contents onto the polished wood of the bar. I met my security team's eyes and gave a small nod. They moved swiftly, professionally. "Sir, it's time for you to leave," the head of security said, gripping Kevin's arm. Kevin struggled, but he was too intoxicated to put up much of a fight. As they led him away, his shouts turned to incoherent mumbles, bouncing off the walls until the front door swung shut behind him. Silence. The guests murmured, conversations resuming in hushed tones. I stood, forcing a bright smile. "Really sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Please enjoy the rest of the evening, drinks are on the house." The regulars shrugged it off. They were used to the occasional drunken disturbance. Within minutes, the chatter returned. But at our table, the mood had shattered beyond repair. Ethan sat stiffly, pushing the food around on his plate. The sleek black suit that had once made him look so confident now seemed to swallow him whole, making him look small, defenseless. His perfect celebration, the one he had dreamed about, planned for, bragged about, had turned into a nightmare. An hour later, he groaned, rubbing his temples. "I have a headache. Can we go home?" The party ended shortly after that. Guests made polite excuses, but I could hear the whispers as they left. "Poor Ethan. Did you see his dad? Can you believe that happened?" As soon as we walked through the front door, Ethan disappeared into his room. I hesitated, then followed. I knocked softly before stepping inside. He was lying on his bed, staring at the ceiling. I wanted to say something. Anything. But the words never came. The next morning, Ethan appeared at breakfast with dark circles under his eyes. He sank into his chair, staring down at his cereal. "How are you feeling, buddy?" I asked gently. "Fine." One word. Flat. Emotionless. The days that followed felt like living in a haunted house. Ethan, once full of energy and laughter, became unrecognizable. If I walked into a room while he was talking to Melissa, he would immediately go silent, like someone had pressed mute. One evening, after he had gone to bed, I turned to Melissa. "Don't you think we should do something? Maybe get him to talk to someone?" She waved a dismissive hand. "He's fine. He just needs time to process what happened. Give him space." But he wasn't fine. None of this was fine. And deep down I knew, this was only the beginning. The tension in our household lingered, unspoken but ever present. Still, we all attended Ethan's graduation ceremony. When his name was called, I clapped so hard my hands stung. He looked sharp in his cap and gown, and for a fleeting moment as he glanced our way and smiled, I dared to hope. Maybe things were finally getting better. Later we hosted a party at our house. I made sure everything was perfect. His favorite foods, his favorite people. Truffle fries. Steak sliders. The small crab cakes he used to sneak from the back of the bar's kitchen. And of course, the ridiculous 3-tiered chocolate cake that had taken nearly a week to perfect. His classmates arrived, and for the first time in weeks, the house felt alive. Laughter. Conversations about college, summer trips. Ethan smiled. He talked. He looked happy. I started to relax. Had we turned a corner? Then his phone rang. Ethan stepped into the hallway to answer it. When he returned, his expression had shifted. A strange calmness, like someone who had already made up his mind. He walked up to me, looking me in the eye for the first time in days. "My dad is coming over," he said. "He wants to congratulate me on graduating." My stomach sank. "Absolutely not," I said immediately. The memory of his birthday was still too raw. His father showing up drunk, causing a scene, smashing dishes. "Ethan, think about what happened last time. He showed up wasted. He destroyed." "That was your fault," Ethan snapped, his voice rising. "None of that would have happened if you had just moved and let him sit down." His eyes burned with resentment. "He's my real dad. You should have just stepped aside." It felt like a punch to the gut. After everything I had done, this was what he thought? I turned to Melissa, desperate. "Melissa," I pleaded, "tell him how inappropriate his father's behavior was that night." But she just sat there, staring at her hands, silent. Again, the same look, the same weakness, the same cowardice she had shown at the wine bar. And something inside me snapped. 5 years of being the perfect stepfather. 5 years of walking on eggshells. 5 years of making excuses for everyone else. 5 years of swallowing my frustration. And now this? I took a slow breath, my voice low but firm. "Listen to me, Ethan." I locked eyes with him. "That was my wine bar. I set that entire party up for you. I got you that damn designer suit you wanted. For 5 years, I had walked on eggshells, pouring my heart, time, and money into a family that never truly saw me as one of their own. I had played the role of the better man, the patient stepfather, the provider, the peacemaker. But in the end, all they had ever wanted from me was what I could give them, never who I actually was. And when I finally refused to be used, when I set a boundary and demanded respect, they turned on me. Melissa and Ethan thought they could manipulate me, that a few rehearsed words and some crocodile tears would be enough to restore their comfortable arrangement. But I had already seen the truth. I had wasted 5 years on a relationship where love was conditional, where my worth was measured only by the size of my bank account. So I walked away. Melissa and Ethan moved into a small apartment across town. Ethan never made it to NYU. Melissa struggled to pick up the pieces of her career. Meanwhile, I thrived. I rebuilt my life, my home, my peace. Because at the end of the day, love isn't about transactions. It's not about who can provide the most money or the nicest gifts. It's about respect, loyalty, and mutual effort. If someone only values you for what you can give them, they don't truly value you at all. And sometimes the best thing you can do, the most powerful thing, is to walk away. Did this story resonate with you? Have you ever felt used by the people closest to you? Have you ever been in a situation where your kindness was mistaken for weakness? If this story hit close to home, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe in standing up for yourself, setting boundaries, and choosing self-respect over toxic relationships, like, share, and subscribe.